What if I told you the reason you're stuck isn't your job, your past, or your luck?
It's the silent way you talk to yourself every single day.
No one ever taught us this.
We were taught how to work harder,
How to please others.
how to survive.
But no one taught us how to value ourselves.
And here's the shocking truth.
The world will never respect you more than you respect yourself.
Low self-worth doesn't scream, it whispers.
It shows up as hesitation, procrastination, settling for less than you deserve.
In Selbstwert, Mindset and Motivation, Fabian Popp reveals how your mindset isn't just shaping your future.
It's secretly controlling it.
If you've ever felt capable of more, but somehow always held back.
This is where everything begins to change.
Stay with us, because the next few minutes might challenge everything you believe about yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emma, and I am just genuinely fascinated by the sources we're digging into today.
And welcome to Book Podcast Zone. I'm John, and I'm really excited to help break this all down. It's incredibly actionable stuff. It really is. Today, we are deep diving into Fabian Popp's powerful new book, Self-Worth, Mindset, and Motivation, the 3 pillars of your personal success.
And this one just came out February 2025. It's built on this this really fundamental idea.
Right, that all the external success, your career, your relationships, even your finances, it can only really last if your internal architecture is sound.
Exactly. And the beauty of Popp's work, I think, is that it offers a kind of shortcut.
A shortcut how?
Well, it lets you bypass that endless, just exhausting cycle of hustle more or just work harder.
Which is the advice we all get all the time.
All the time. So our mission here is to pull out the practical, the concise and the scientifically backed insights from these 3 core pillars.
We're giving you an X-ray view of the internal operating system that really governs your entire life.
For sure. And if you're struggling with procrastination or that feeling of settling or even self-sabotage, Popp argues the answer is right here, inside these 3 pillars. Absolutely. We're not looking for temporary fixes, like a Band-Aid. We're looking for a foundational shift.
And his approach is so relevant because he analyzes these internal systems, self-worth, mindset, motivation, and shows how they underpin everything.
And if they're misaligned,
then any external victory you get, it feels temporary. Or even worse, it feels fraudulent, like you're an imposter.
the classic imposter syndrome.
Right. It's the difference between slapping a fresh coat of paint on a crumbling wall versus, tearing that wall down and rebuilding the foundation.
And we're here to talk about the foundation. That's where true sustainable success actually begins.
So let's unpack this.
I'll do it.
Section 1, Pillar 1, Understanding and Defining Self-Worth.
So Popp starts by grounding this entire philosophy in his own experience, which I really appreciate.
It's not just theory.
Not at all. He talks about his own turning point phase, where he realized that all the external metrics he was chasing, the promotions, the money, they just weren't delivering any internal fulfillment.
And that lived experience, it just lends so much credibility to the system he developed. It shows he's not just an academic observer. He's been in the trenches. He's an experienced guide.
Right. And what I found really insightful is the sequence he insists on for the 3 pillars. Self-worth first, then mindset, then motivation.
It's non-negotiable for him. He doesn't treat them as, interchangeable parts you can just swap around.
Which I think is what so many people try to do. They try to skip that first step.
Oh, absolutely. They think they can just power through with motivation or a positive attitude.
So why is that sequence so essential? Why can't I just, achieve a bunch of stuff and then feel worthy?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And this is where his analogy of the skyscraper is it's incredibly helpful for visualizing this whole structure.
Okay, I love a good analogy. Lay it on me.
So imagine you're building a massive skyscraper. That's your life, your career goals, in a really demanding city like Chicago or Seattle with intense weather.
Okay, got it.
You have to prioritize the subsurface work first. You can't just start building up.
The foundation.
The foundation. Self-worth is that deep, reinforced concrete slab. It's the steel that goes way down into the bedrock. If that slab is weak, if it's cracked, if it's just not deep enough, then the whole superstructure, your proactive mindset, your relentless motivation, it's all fundamentally compromised.
So success, in this analogy, is like the load on the building, the wind, the weight of all the floors.
Precisely. A promotion, a big project, public criticism, a financial setback, that's a hurricane hitting your building. If the foundation is built on quicksand, The first time life throws a real storm at you, the whole thing comes crashing down.
Okay, that makes so much sense. So if my self-worth is weak, if my value is conditional on my performance, then when I fail, which is inevitable, my internal voice doesn't say, okay, that strategy didn't work, let's try something else.
No. What does it say?
It says, I am a failure, or I'm fundamentally incompetent. It's an identity statement.
It's an identity statement. And that stops all future motivation in its tracks. Popp emphasizes that the whole system crashes because your identity, the core of who you are, is tied to the immediate external outcome.
So motivation and a growth mindset are the tools for moving forward.
Right.
But self-worth is what determines whether you believe you're even allowed to use those tools, whether you deserve the success they might bring.
Yes. It's the psychological safety net. It's what allows you to attempt difficult things without living in constant fear of total collapse if you stumble.
Wow. Okay, so let's get deeper into that then. In Chapter 2, he gets really specific about what self-worth actually is.
He does. And he makes sure we don't confuse it with self-esteem, which is a super common mistake.
I think I've probably been making that mistake my whole life.
We all have.
Yeah.
The distinction is absolutely vital. Self-esteem is external and it's conditional. It's a fluctuating stock price based on your daily performance.
So you feel high self-esteem when you get a bonus, or your project gets praised, or you like how you look in the mirror that day.
Exactly. It's inherently unstable because external validation and performance are, by their very nature, unstable.
So what's self-worth then?
Self-worth, according to Popp, is the opposite. It's intrinsic. It's unconditional. It's the deep, unwavering belief that you are inherently valuable.
Just because.
Just because you exist. You're a human being, worthy of respect and happiness, period. It doesn't drop when your performance dips. It doesn't need external proof.
That sounds like freedom, true liberation. But if we're all born with this inherent value, how does society get so good at systematically chipping it away?
Well, he points to two main culprits: childhood shaping and societal conditioning.
The 1-2 punch.
It really is. The childhood part is where the initial blueprint gets drawn. Think about it. If in your early life, your parents or your teachers only gave you praise or attention based on your behavior.
Like you only get dessert if you finish your vegetables.
Or I'm only proud of you when you bring home an A. You internalize a fundamental rule. My value is conditional on my output.
And that creates an adult who is just built for ceaseless achievement.
A hamster on a wheel. They might be incredibly successful on the outside, but internally, they're fragile. They're driven by the fear of being exposed as worthless, not by the joy of creating or mastering something.
That's what he calls the perfectionist trap.
That's the one. And if childhood conditioning writes the internal rule book, then societal conditioning comes along and acts like this relentless, screaming validator of that broken rule book.
It just reinforces it every single day.
Every day. Just look at the pressure of the American success narrative, hustle culture.
Right.
The messaging is relentless. Success has to be big, visible, fast, and usually financial. And failure. Failure is almost never discussed in public. You only see the highlight reel.
The classic example is the academic pressure cooker we put kids through in the U.S.
Oh, it's brutal.
We train high school students to believe that anything less than an Ivy League acceptance means they've somehow failed, that they're less worthwhile.
And if they choose a trade school or a state college or, God forbid, they prioritize their mental health over endless striving.
They're seen as settling.
Right. And that framework is so damaging because the expectations are not only unrealistic, they're often completely at odds with actual well-being.
So by measuring your worth by these external, competitive, and constantly moving goalposts, the newest iPhone, the bigger house, the fancier job title, you're basically designing a system where you are guaranteed to fail the worth test.
You're guaranteed to fail. Popp says constant external comparison is a recipe for chronic low self-worth.
So to kind of counter this, he includes a simple self-assessment in the book. It's like a checkpoint for you, the listener.
It forces you to get honest.
It asks, are you driven mainly by a fear of inadequacy and a constant need for approval, or are you driven by a genuine internal desire and a sense of peace? It makes you isolate your core motivation.
And that moment of honest self-assessment, that's the beginning of the repair work. It makes you ask yourself, if I lost my job and my social status tomorrow, what's the irreducible value that's left?
And if the answer is nothing,
then Popp argues your foundation needs immediate, urgent attention.
Okay, we've clearly defined the foundation, which is self-worth. Now, Popp spends 2 whole chapters explaining how to actually repair and reinforce it.
Which is the most important part.
It is. But before we dive into silencing that relentless inner voice, if you are finding this deep dive valuable, please remember to like, subscribe, and share for more update and continue to next. Welcome back. So Chapter 3 gets right into the trenches. It focuses on the most immediate and maybe the most damaging symptom of low self-worth, the inner critic.
Ah, yes. That negative self-talk that seems to just anticipate and undermine every single proactive decision you try to make.
It's exhausting. And Popp, he treats it like a psychological virus that needs a specific kind of treatment.
It's an insidious voice because it often masquerades as truth or as helpful caution.
Right. I'm not being negative, I'm just being realistic.
Exactly. It's the voice of all those conditional values we internalized as kids. So Popp provides these direct, practical techniques to start fighting back, starting with guilt management.
Guilt and regret. They feel so tangled up. How does he advise managing guilt so it can still be a moral compass without, becoming a self-destructive weapon?
He argues that we have to fundamentally redefine our relationship with making mistakes.
Okay.
So productive regret focuses on the action. It says, I made a mistake. How do I analyze this data and apply a fix so it doesn't happen again?
That sounds healthy.
It is. But destructive guilt, which is what the inner critic loves, focuses on the identity. It says, I made a mistake, therefore I am a terrible person who deserves to be punished.
And that just leads to shame and paralysis.
Total paralysis.
Yeah.
So the key strategy here is what he calls radical acceptance of imperfection. A mistake is just data. It is not a definition of who you are. You have to create a psychological firewall between the action and your core worth.
That separation. It sounds simple, but it's so hard to do in the moment, especially for perfectionists.
It takes practice. So much practice. But that leads to his next point, which is the comparison trap.
But the thing social media basically perfected and monetized.
You said it. It's everywhere. And Popp says we have to actively, consciously fight it.
Because it's a game you can't win.
It is psychologically unwinnable. His techniques for neutralizing it are all built on recognizing the inherent cognitive distortion at play.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when you compare your life to a colleague who just got a massive promotion, you're not seeing the full picture.
Right.
You aren't comparing their 60 hours of stress a week, their family tensions, their own chronic self-doubt to your life. You're comparing their single curated success story to your entire complex, messy internal reality.
It's the modern digital version of keeping up with the Joneses in the American suburbs.
Exactly. Except now, the Joneses are a million perfectly curated profiles from all over the globe.
You're comparing your entire unedited director's cut of your life to everyone else's 2-minute, high-budget movie trailer.
That's a perfect way to put it. So the technique Popp suggests is about active interruption. The moment that thought arises, look how successful they are, I'm such a failure, you have to pause.
And do what?
You immediately list 2 things you achieved today that align with your personal values, not with external metrics.
So it brings the focus back to your own journey.
It grounds you in your intrinsic path.
Yeah.
Because if you are intrinsically worthy, then someone else's success poses 0 threat to your value. It exists alongside yours.
The ultimate goal then is to shift the inner dialogue itself, moving beyond just, squashing the negative and towards actively creating a new functional internal language.
Yes, and it's really important to stress the realism here. Popp is not advocating for toxic positivity.
Right, just slapping a happy sticker on a real problem.
No, it's not about rejecting reality. It's about functional rewiring. So if your inner critic says, I'm always late, I can never manage my time, your brain is going to reject a huge leap like, I am a hyper-organized time management genius.
Because it's just not believable.
It's not believable.
Yeah.
So you shift to a neutral, process-oriented statement instead.
Let's do that live exercise again, but maybe focus on a work context that a lot of our listeners might deal with.
Okay, good idea.
So the self-critical thought is, I spent 3 hours writing this report, and it's absolute garbage. I wasted my time, and I'm clearly not smart enough for this job. That's a huge blow to self-worth.
It's a total knockout punch. The emotional core there is devastation and self-condemnation.
So what's the functional shift?
You have to decouple the result from your identity. The new statement becomes something like, the current draft of this report does not meet the necessary standard.
Okay, that's neutral, factual.
Factual. Then you add the action. I will identify the 3 weakest sections and allocate 1 hour tomorrow morning to review the structural feedback needed to improve them.
Wow. Just listen to the difference there. The first statement stops all action, and it damages your identity.
And the second one is a roadmap. It's a plan for future action that focuses purely on the process. That small, daily, cognitive choice is the absolute core of rebuilding your self-worth.
So we've moved from that defensive posture of fighting the inner critic, and Chapter 4 is all about active construction.
It's about building a robust, positive self-worth structure using these simple, everyday strategies.
And the strategies he outlines are simple, but he says their cumulative effect is exponential. The first one is gratitude practice.
Right, but he is so adamant that it has to be specific and actionable. It can't just be a vague feeling of, I'm thankful.
Why the need for such precision?
It's neurological. Our brains have a built-in negativity bias. We evolved to scan for threats, for things that are missing or wrong.
The saber-toothed tiger in the bushes.
Exactly. So when you actively journal specific gratitude moments like, I'm grateful for my colleague who took 10 minutes to explain that complex process to me, or I am grateful that I managed to read for 15 minutes today and achieve a small goal, you are consciously forcing your brain to gather evidence of abundance and safety.
Literally rewiring it to focus away from lack.
You are. And this leads directly into his next point, success journaling.
This one can feel a little egotistical or like a vanity project for some people.
I get that. But Popp emphasizes it's for logging the small, quiet, daily wins, the things nobody else sees.
And the people who need this the most are the ones with low self-worth.
For sure, because they habitually discount their own achievements. They're always waiting for some external validation, some big fanfare.
So what kind of small wins are we talking about?
Things like finally setting up that auto pay for a bill you've been putting off, successfully mediating a minor conflict at work, sticking to a 10-minute meditation, handling a difficult email professionally instead of reactively.
So by logging those, you create this solid internal body of evidence that proves you are competent, you're reliable, you put in the effort.
You are building trust with yourself. It's about respecting the small steps.
And a key element he addresses, which feels especially relevant today, is body acceptance.
Oh, this is a huge one. The physical self is a frequent battleground for low self-worth, especially in our culture that's so obsessed with idealized appearances.
So what's Popp's point on this?
It's actually pretty radical. He says that true self-worth demands that you accept the physical vehicle you currently inhabit, period.
And that acceptance isn't just passive resignation like, oh, well, this is it.
No, it's a foundational acknowledgement that your worth is non-contingent on your weight, your shape, or how you measure up to some conventional standard of attractiveness. If you reject the very vessel that carries your consciousness through the world, you are creating a massive, permanent crack in your own foundation.
He shares some personal vulnerabilities here, doesn't he?
He does. He notes that strengthening his own self-worth was a messy, incremental process. It took consistency, not just some big burst of motivation. And that realism is what keeps this chapter from just being, feel-good fluff.
It underscores that crucial point. These strategies are practices, not destinations. You don't just fix your self-worth and then you're done.
You maintain the foundation daily, just like you'd maintain a house.
Okay, so let's give you, the listener, a challenge reflecting Popp's interactive style.
I like this.
Commit to the success journaling strategy for just 7 days. Tonight, before you sleep, write down 3 small, quiet wins from your day, things you would normally just dismiss.
And then just see how that body of evidence starts to change your internal metric of success. The evidence often surprises people. They realize they are far more competent and capable than their inner critic allows them to believe.
That covers the crucial first pillar, self-worth. We've established the foundation. Now, how does that foundation support the internal engine of progress?
The mindset.
Next, we crack open the power of your mindset. But before we continue, if you found value in this deep dive, please remember to like, subscribe, and share for more update and continue to next.
Welcome back. We have fortified the foundation of self-worth. Now we're on to pillar 2, mindset.
The engine of progress.
Exactly. Popp dedicates Chapter 5 to Carol Dweck's classic work on the fixed versus growth mindset.
So why is this conceptual shift the necessary engine that has to run on that sound foundation?
Because your mindset is the interpreter. It's the software that dictates how you process every single event in your life, especially effort and failure.
Okay, so if self-worth is the core belief about who you are,
then mindset is the rulebook you use to engage with the world. You can have a strong foundation of self-worth, but if your rulebook is broken, you still can't take effective action.
Okay, let's detail the 2 rulebooks then, as Popp defines them, and why they lead to such different outcomes.
Let's start with the fixed mindset. This rulebook operates under the premise that your traits, your intelligence, your talent, your abilities are static. They're fixed.
So you've either got it or you don't.
Exactly. If I have the talent, I succeed. If I don't, I fail. The internal dialogue is, I got a bad review, therefore I am bad at my job.
It's all about proving yourself.
Yes, this worldview prioritizes looking smart over the process of learning. It fosters avoidance of challenges, defensiveness, and fragility because any failure threatens your core identity as a smart person.
And the growth mindset.
The growth mindset is the opposite. It posits that abilities are malleable. They can be developed through strategic dedication and hard work.
So the rule there is different.
The internal rule is, I got a bad review, and that shows me exactly where I need to focus my development. This worldview prioritizes learning over looking smart. Challenge is embraced, and failure isn't a personal indictment.
It's just information.
It's essential information needed for strategic adjustment. It's data.
And Popp stresses that the entire psychological and philosophical difference between these two hinges on the power of one tiny three-letter word.
Yet, it might be the highest leverage word in the English language for personal development.
How so?
Changing the statement, I can't figure out this new software, to I can't figure out this new software yet, it instantly transforms the entire experience.
It goes from a final verdict on your incompetence
To a temporary status update.
Yeah.
It removes the threat to your ego.
Yeah.
And it reframes the effort as just a necessary part of the timeline rather than proof that you're inadequate.
Let's connect this to the U.S. professional world. You see this contrast in company cultures all the time.
Oh, constantly.
Imagine two managers facing a new technological disruption that makes their old skill set obsolete.
Okay. The fixed mindset manager panics. They feel deeply threatened. They resist the new technology. They blame the system. They might even try to sabotage the implementation.
Why?
Because if they can't master it immediately, their identity as a competent leader is at risk.
Yeah.
So they avoid the challenge altogether.
And the growth mindset manager.
The growth mindset manager sees the disruption as a puzzle. They might say, okay, this is complex, but I'm excited to delegate and learn alongside my team.
Yeah.
They view the learning curve as necessary friction, as part of the job.
And more U.S. companies are realizing that promoting a growth mindset isn't just some feel-good HR exercise.
No, it's a survival mechanism. It's essential in rapidly changing industries.
But I want to push back a little here. Doesn't this run the risk of oversimplification? I mean, if I truly have been performing poorly because I lack a skill, should I just ignore that reality?
That's a necessary and important question. Popp doesn't suggest denial at all. The growth mindset is based on effort, but that effort has to be strategic.
So it's not just about trying harder at the same broken strategy.
Not at all. Dweck's research, which is based on detailed studies of students and professionals, shows that people with a growth mindset don't just feel better. They actively seek out better strategies, they ask for help sooner, and they persist longer, which leads to measurably better outcomes over time.
So the key is strategic effort, not just happy thoughts.
Precisely. Which is often blocked by these deeply ingrained old scripts we carry around.
The limiting beliefs.
And that's what Chapter 6 is all about, actively dismantling that old internal architecture.
These beliefs, he calls them the silent assassins of potential.
That's a great way to put it. They're the narratives we created as kids to make sense of conditional love or past failures. So Popp provides a three-stage process for getting rid of them: identification, challenge, and replacement.
Identification, that sounds like the hardest step.
It is, because they're sneaky. Limiting beliefs usually surface right when you're about to take a major action, and they provide the perfect internal excuse for you to procrastinate.
So what do they sound like?
They sound like, I'm not extroverted enough to be a good networker, or I always mess up anything related to money, or real success is only for people who come from a different background than I do. You have to pinpoint the specific narrative that's justifying your hesitation.
And once you've identified it, you have to challenge it. You can't just tell yourself to stop believing it.
Correct. You have to treat the belief like a hypothesis in a lab. You interrogate its evidence.
Yeah.
You ask, is it universally true that I always mess up money? What about that time I paid off my credit card? What about the savings I built up last year? You actively search for counter evidence. That questioning phase is what dissolves the belief's power.
And then finally, the replacement phase, where we use affirmations to reinforce the new empowering belief.
Right. Affirmations, in Popp's framework, are the reinforcement. They are designed to consciously counter the old scripts. So if the old script was, I am not worthy of financial stability, the new growth-oriented affirmation might be. I am financially intelligent and I make intentional strategic choices with my resources.
And you have to practice that consistently.
Until the new belief feels more natural and more true than the old one did.
Let's use a common limiting belief in today's job market, where a lot of professionals might feel marginalized. Something like, because I took time off for family or my health, my career is permanently stalled and I'm too far behind to ever catch up.
That's a powerful one. And that belief is steeped in the fixed mindset idea that time off equals a degradation of your skills.
So what's the empowering rewrite?
The rewrite would be something like, my nonlinear career path gives me unique resilience, diverse experience, and deep empathy, which are now high-value professional assets.
And the affirmation.
My experience is an asset, and I am actively seeking roles that value complexity and a diverse background.
Let's do that rewording beliefs together exercise that Popp suggests. So you, the listener, think of a specific limiting thought you have. For example, I am terrible at public speaking.
Okay. That thought is a statement of identity, and it's final. It's a verdict.
So how do we shift it?
The powerful affirmation shifts it to effort and process. It becomes, public speaking is a trainable skill, and I am actively committed to mastering effective delivery through consistent practice and seeking out feedback.
That is a massive step away from paralyzing self-judgment.
And a huge step into actionable strategy.
That's the engine of change mindset. But, life doesn't stop throwing curveballs. The third pillar requires us to know how to bounce back when stress hits hard.
And it always does.
More on building resilience after you. Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
Welcome back. We're now in Chapter 7, Mental Strength in Daily Life, and this chapter addresses the inevitable reality that success is just not a straight line.
Not even close. Setbacks, failures, high stress, they are a guaranteed part of the journey.
No.
So this chapter is all about transforming how we react to them, to make sure the structure we so carefully built doesn't just crumble.
And mental strength, he says, is the discipline that connects self-worth and mindset.
Exactly. It's what keeps that growth mindset running when your emotional brain is just screaming, run away, this is a disaster.
Yeah.
So Popp details 2 crucial techniques for developing this kind of resilience.
What's the first one?
The first is reframing. This is the conscious, deliberate ability to change the interpretation of an event. So when a project gets rejected, the fixed mindset immediately sees proof of my unworthiness. Right. I knew I couldn't do it.
Reframing forces your conscious mind to see proof of learning. It's like an act of mental judo. You use the weight and momentum of the failure to propel you forward, not to pull you down.
Can you give us a practical internal script for that? Let's say I missed a major deadline, my boss is disappointed, and I just feel that hot flood of shame washing over me.
Okay. The immediate fixed mindset thought is, I am irresponsible. I let everyone down. I'm never going to get a big project again.
Sounds familiar.
The reframing script has to be analytical. It has to be unemotional, it sounds like. I missed the deadline, which caused a negative outcome. I now need to analyze the 3 specific bottlenecks that led to this delay. Was it lack of resources? Poor planning? Overcommitment?
And then?
Then I will communicate the recovery plan to my boss and build systems to ensure this specific error is avoided next time. The key is that shift from who I am to what I will do.
Okay, that makes sense. And the second technique he stresses is mindfulness. How does grounding myself in the present moment help me handle a massive failure?
Because failure and stress often trigger catastrophic thinking. We project past mistakes onto all future outcomes.
This one thing went wrong, so everything will always go wrong.
Yes. Mindfulness is the discipline of emotional non-reactivity. Grounding techniques like focusing on your breath, or the sounds in the room, or the feeling of your feet on the floor, they reduce the intensity of that emotional flood, the fight-or-flight response.
So it creates a pause.
It creates a vital window of opportunity for the analytical, growth-oriented part of your brain to kick in before the emotional panic completely takes over.
Right.
You create space between the stimulus, the failure, and your response, which is usually self-condemnation.
Popp also makes a really strong case for sharing failure stories. Why is normalizing imperfections so critical for building resilience?
Because the myth of effortless overnight success is so isolating. It makes people feel like they're the only ones struggling. When high-profile people openly talk about their business bankruptcies or their career false starts or personal struggles, it makes the journey feel attainable for everyone else. It shows that failure is actually a prerequisite for high achievement, not its opposite.
So resilience isn't about avoiding the punch.
Not at all. It's about knowing you can take the punch, get knocked down, and still get back up.
I think the powerful, culturally relevant historical example of Thomas Edison and the light bulb is a perfect illustration of this.
Oh, it's a masterclass in applied reframing. Edison's story, which is so celebrated in the U.S., is all about resilience. The fixed mindset would have looked at thousands of failed experiments as a monumental waste of time.
And definitive proof that the goal was impossible.
Right. The emotional drain alone would be crippling for most people.
But his famous statement, which everyone quotes, completely transformed that reality. He said, "I have not failed."
I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work.
That is the growth mindset in action.
It is. He consciously chose to reinterpret every single burned-out filament, every short circuit, not as a loss, but as a success. It was a definitive piece of data that narrowed the field of possibilities for him.
And that reinterpretation changes the emotional experience of the process itself.
Which allows for persistence.
Yeah.
That ability to redefine struggle as progress is the absolute engine of mental strength.
We've built the foundation with self-worth, and we've established the blueprint with mindset. So now, how do we get the sustained energy to actually execute that blueprint?
Pillar 3, motivation.
We turn to motivation. But before we dive into the science of drive, please remember to like, subscribe, and share for more update and continue to next.
Welcome back to Pillar 3, motivation. This is where Popp really grounds his advice in hard science, explaining why that initial burst of energy you get for a new project or a New Year's resolution always seems to just vanish.
It feels like a magic trick. The volatility of motivation, he says, stems from relying way too heavily on the wrong kind of drive. So he makes this essential distinction between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Okay, let's break those down.
Extrinsic motivation is, as we've touched on, external. It's the drive for rewards, for status, or to avoid punishment. It's powerful, for sure. It gets you out the door to work in the morning. But it's fundamentally brittle. It relies on a constantly increasing external stimulus. If you get a bonus this year, you need a bigger bonus next year to feel the same level of motivation. It's an addiction.
And intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is the sustainable engine.
That's the one. Intrinsic drive comes from internal satisfaction, from a sense of mastery, autonomy, purpose, or just the sheer enjoyment of the process itself.
You're doing the task because it aligns with your values.
Not because someone is dangling a carrot in front of you. Popp emphasizes that long-term success requires you to actively structure your life to maximize those intrinsic rewards.
He also ties this directly into the role of dopamine, and he moves beyond that simple pleasure chemical definition that we all hear.
Which is so important. Dopamine is actually the seeking chemical. It drives anticipation. It drives wanting. When you're working on a task, dopamine spikes during the pursuit, which is what motivates you to start and to continue.
So the reward itself, the liking part, that's different.
That's often handled by different chemicals, like endorphins. So Popp argues that the key to sustainable motivation is structuring your goals so that the process of pursuit itself, the small wins, the feeling of getting into a flow state, provides you with regular, minor dopamine hits.
So if you only wait for the final, massive reward at the very end,
the gap is too long. The dopamine dips, and your motivation completely stalls out.
And that's the core of the motivation cycle he outlines. Understanding that cycle normalizes the dips.
Yes. When your motivation fades, it's not a personal failing or a moral lapse on your part. It's a neurological dip that requires you to rely on your systems and your discipline, not your feelings.
It relieves that pressure to feel on and excited all the time.
Resilience isn't about constant high motivation. It's about having systems that function even when your motivation is low.
Let's expand on that intrinsic versus extrinsic contrast. Maybe use a U.S. corporate example, but apply a sociological lens to the outcome.
Okay, great. Let's imagine two individuals starting an environmental cleanup nonprofit. We'll call them Sarah and David.
Okay.
Sarah is purely extrinsically motivated. She wants the public accolades, the high-profile awards, the massive government grants. That's her fuel.
And David?
David is intrinsically motivated. He genuinely values conservation, and he finds deep satisfaction in the process of developing effective, on-the-ground cleanup methods. He loves solving the puzzle.
So what happens when a big grant falls through or a public relations crisis hits?
Sarah, who is driven by that external validation, is devastated. She might even quit, feeling like all her efforts were a waste because the reward disappeared.
But David, driven by his core values,
he remains resilient. His effort doesn't diminish just because the external reward went away. His internal measure of success, which is mastery and service, is still being met. even if the external metric of grant money is lost.
And that moves us seamlessly into Chapter 9, which shifts the focus from the hype of short-term motivation.
To the quiet, long-term power of discipline and building good systems.
Exactly.
Popp defines discipline not as punishment or self-flagellation, but as the consistent application of small, automated behaviors.
Because willpower is finite.
It's a finite resource. But systems are the engine of infinite consistency. So he lays out 3 critical system-building strategies.
What's the first one?
First, goal setting has to be integrated with the other 2 pillars. If your goal is so massive that it triggers your inner critic, or it's completely unbelievable to your current level of self-worth, you're just setting up a failure mechanism.
Goals have to be challenging, but believable.
Crucially believable given your current internal infrastructure.
Okay, second strategy.
Habit building. This is the essential mechanism for automation. You have to make the desired action so small that your resistance to it is minimized.
This sounds a lot like the work of people like James Clear.
Very aligned with behavioral science. Popp emphasizes making habits small, obvious, easy, and satisfying. So instead of resolving to write a novel, which relies on a massive, unsustainable spike of willpower.
You automate the habit.
Right. I will write 1 sentence on my laptop right after I brush my teeth. That 1% change reduces the emotional cost of starting the task to almost 0. It's all about building momentum, not relying on these marathon sessions of willpower.
And the third strategy involves structuring your reward systems carefully.
Very carefully. The reward has to reinforce the positive habit, but without undermining the intrinsic motivation you're trying to build.
Oh, it's a fine line.
It is. The reward should be a celebratory acknowledgement of your discipline, not the only reason you did the action. For instance, if you finish your difficult 30 minutes of deep work, the reward might be playing a video game for 15 minutes.
So the reward follows the process, reinforcing the habit loop.
But the primary satisfaction should still come from the sense of mastery you achieved during the deep work itself.
Now, the single most impactful concept in this chapter, which really counters that American cultural tendency toward dramatic overnight transformation, is the 1% rule.
We have to spend some time on this. It's about the power of incremental compounding, but applied to psychology and skill development.
Most people seek that 50% jump in performance overnight.
Right, which requires an unsustainable amount of effort and usually leads to burnout and self-condemnation when you inevitably fail. Popp says consistency always wins over intensity.
And mathematically, the difference is just staggering.
It's insane. If you focus on getting just 1% better every day or even just every work week, the compounding effect means you are 37 times better by the end of the year.
And that small, achievable change, it doesn't trigger the self-sabotage alarms.
It feels non-threatening to your inner critic and your fixed mindset. But the long-term impact is exponential growth.
Let's apply this 1% rule to 2 common U.S. goals: financial planning and physical fitness.
Perfect. Financial planning is overwhelming for most people. If the big goal is save enough for a down payment on a house, the 1% rule says your habit is, I will spend 5 minutes every Sunday evening reviewing my budget, and I will automate a $10 transfer into my savings account.
Just $10.
That consistency, even with a minuscule amount, builds psychological certainty and proof of competence far better than trying to save $1,000 one month and then 0 for the next 3.
Okay, and for fitness?
Instead of resolving to go to the gym for 2 hours 5 times a week, which most people quit by February.
Guilty.
The 1% rule suggests I will do 10 push-ups and 10 sit-ups immediately after I get out of bed in the morning. It's so small you can't say no to it, but that consistency automates the identity of I am an active person. And that identity change is what eventually drives the larger efforts.
That small, achievable victory is the fuel for the intrinsic motivation cycle.
You get that small dopamine hit of success, which makes you want to start the next 1% increment.
And finally, a really practical tool he suggests for immediate implementation: creating a motivation playlist.
Yeah, this is a great little hack. Music is an immediate external cue that can bypass a lot of mental friction.
So you have a specific, curated playlist
that you only play when you are about to start your deep work or your 1% habit. Your brain very quickly associates that music with focus and productive energy. It's a simple way to trigger the intrinsic drive when discipline is what's really required.
We've covered all 3 pillars individually: self-worth, mindset, and motivation. The true power, though, as he says, is in the synthesis.
How they all work together.
Before we put it all together in a structured plan, please remember to like, subscribe, and share for more update and continue to next.
Welcome back for our final section. We have reached the apex of Popp's framework, integration.
Putting it all together. Chapter 10 stresses that these three pillars have to operate in harmony. Possessing a strong foundation of self-worth is kind of useless if you don't use the right tools, mindset, and motivation to build upon it.
This interdependence is the core insight of the whole book, I think.
Yeah.
As we've been discussing, a high-performing motivation system will just burn out if a fixed mindset interprets any negative feedback as catastrophic failure.
And similarly, the ability to reframe failure from a mindset perspective is impossible if your deep-seated low self-worth convinces you that you don't even deserve the opportunity to try again.
The integrated loop is this. Self-worth provides the unconditional belief in your right to pursue your goals.
Right. The permission slip.
The permission slip.
Yeah.
Mindset provides the flexible, resilient strategy for navigating the obstacles you'll inevitably face.
And motivation.
Motivation provides the consistent, incremental energy to sustain the effort over the long haul.
So Popp's mechanism for forcing this integration is the 30-day plan. This is the structure that moves you, the listener, from just conceptual understanding to active systemic application.
The 30-day plan is so critical because it forces consistency. And it's not a goal achievement plan, it's a habit integration plan.
What's the difference?
The goal isn't to, say, lose 10 pounds in 30 days. The goal is to build the identity of a resilient, worthy, growth-oriented person by practicing the associated habits every single day.
Can you detail what a daily task in that plan might look like just to show the synergy?
Sure. A single day's task might be something like this. Start the day by journaling 3 things you are grateful for, explicitly focusing on your internal qualities or small efforts you made yesterday. That's pillar 1, self-worth.
Okay.
Then when you feel resistance hit during a challenging task at work, use the yet shift to identify the specific learning that's required. That's pillar 2, mindset.
Got it.
And then immediately afterwards, perform your 1% habit for 5 minutes. And that's pillar 3, motivation. This structure ensures that no single pillar is neglected, and the consistency builds all 3 mental muscles at the same time.
And the focus has to always be on consistency over perfection.
Always. If you miss a day, you don't throw in the towel and start over from day 1. That's the old fixed mindset way.
So what do?
You just start where you are the next day. This honors the self-worth foundation by treating imperfection as a natural occurrence, not as a moral failure that invalidates all your previous effort.
The 30-day plan creates a kind of crucible for identifying and dissolving those old resistance patterns that are guaranteed to resurface when you try to change.
Precisely.
We should definitely dedicate some future deep dives to tackling that 30-day challenge itself. Reinforce that integration is an active, ongoing process.
That's a great idea. And that leads us to Chapter 11, which provides Popp's final reflection on this long-term journey.
Right. He acknowledges that the biggest challenge is maintaining momentum after the initial excitement of the transformation fades.
The principles are simple, but the practice is hard, especially when the novelty wears off.
Consistency is the quiet currency of success.
It is, and it requires vigilance. You have to consciously defend your new self-worth and mindset from external criticism and from the resurfacing of your old limiting beliefs.
And that defense requires constant application of the tools we've discussed.
Gratitude, reframing, the 1% rule, they're your daily maintenance routine.
And the final, really powerful step he talks about is vision casting.
Actively writing your own new chapter. This is the ultimate payoff for building all this internal infrastructure.
How does that work?
When you truly believe you are worthy pillar 1, and you know your abilities are flexible and can grow pillar 2, then your vision for your future is no longer constrained by the fear of failure or by societal limitations.
You define your future based on your genuine potential and your deeply held intrinsic values.
Exactly. Popp urges listeners to write a detailed narrative of the person they are building the infrastructure to become.
And that brings us to a strong call to action for everyone listening. We've given you the roadmap, the toolkit, and the architecture. The next step is moving from passive listening to active implementation of these tools, starting right now. Start that 1% habit today.
Don't wait.
We are wrapping up our deep dive into the architecture of personal success. One final time. Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next. This has been an incredibly detailed and, I think, a really practical look at Fabian Popp's framework.
I agree.
To summarize the core takeaway, sustainable success begins not with chasing external circumstances, but with fixing that silent, often negative internal conversation you're having about your own inherent value.
And the roadmap he provides involves deliberately securing that unconditional self-worth, adopting a flexible and resilient growth mindset, and then cultivating intrinsic motivation through discipline systems like the 1% rule.
We've armed you with practical tools, success journaling to build undeniable evidence of your competence,
The revolutionary "I can't do this yet" shift to overcome those mental barriers.
reframing failure from a catastrophic event into just functional data.
And the compounding power of the 1% rule.
So if we revisit that foundation chapter 2, where we talked about how low self-worth is often inherited from societal conditioning and from family messages that teach us conditional self-acceptance, a pretty profound question arises for you to reflect on.
I think so. If you, today, are consciously working to build an unconditional foundation of self-worth for yourself, how does that single choice fundamentally change the success, the happiness, and the internal valuation trajectory for the next generation you influence?
Your children, your mentees, your colleagues.
Are you breaking that generational pattern of conditional acceptance?
That's the true long-term legacy of this work, isn't it? Building a sense of worth that is not only robust for you, but is transferable to everyone around you.
That is the ultimate impact of starting with the foundation.
Thank you so much for supplying these crucial sources for our deep dive today. Our mission is always to turn your shared sources into actionable, memorable knowledge.
And we really hope you feel ready to start writing your own new chapter.
Until next time.